Hey, today we're thinking about shot composition in regards to video productions. So let's dive right in. First thing to think about is aspect ratio. So, are you dealing with, the easiest way to think about it is on your mobile device. Are you dealing with portrait style or landscape style, right? So, the 9 by 16 or the 16 by 9 and the Instagram version there, the square 1 by 1 ratio. So, we're just talking about height versus width, really. And of course, I'm bringing up mobile devices because that's the direction that we're going. Everything is going to be consumed on a mobile device eventually. So there's other things that you consider too. You're talking about 1080p. You're talking about what it might be, 4:3 ratio. All these types of things that are connected with traditional television. And then we've got all this mobile content that has different formats based on, what type of platform you're on, whether it's a social media platform or YouTube, or if it's a short versus a traditional video, all of those different things. And it comes into play, and we need to understand what it is that we're shooting for. So if we're going to be creating video content, we need to know, well, where is this going to end up? Or is this going to try to double dip with things? For example, I make YouTube videos in a traditional 16 by 9 or 1080p, sort of 4K, whatever. I try to do that in a traditional aspect ratio. But I'm also oftentimes considering, well, little pieces of this content can also be turned into YouTube shorts, which are actually in the 9 by 16 aspect ratio. So even though the original content is going to be viewed in 16 by 9, I'm thinking, is it possible to make derivative content from this base piece of video and then turn it into 9 by 16 and repurpose it in smaller chunks for YouTube shorts? So it's important to keep in mind aspect ratio. It also comes into play when you're thinking about watching a theatrical version of a film on a different size screen. You're going to see some of that like window boxing kind of stuff where there's black bars on the left or the top and the bottom. That's just, it's trying to give you the original experience and how things were filmed on whatever aspect ratio your actual screen allows for. We also want to be considerate of shot sizes. So you're going to be creating all sorts of content. You want to understand what those shot sizes are and be able to communicate those ideas or those intentions to your crew. Or maybe you need to do that. Maybe you need to interpret things that are being told to you as a crew member or as a camera operator or something. So you need to kind of understand what those shot sizes really look like. But also we need to understand how we can intentionally use those shot sizes to make interesting and engaging content, as opposed to having medium close-ups for everything all the time. You're going to take the same sequence, the same actual footage, the same stuff that you're filming, and use a combination of all these different shot sizes to make an immersive experience that your audience can be engaged in. So understanding those different shot sizes, being able to communicate them, and being able to execute them and arrange them in an interesting way is going to greatly benefit your video productions. Also, need to take into consideration the rule of thirds when you're composing all your different shots. So you've probably heard of this before, but we're basically turning our screen, our image, into a tic-tac-toe board, and using those intersections and those different areas to emphasize our subject in a shot. So sometimes we want our shots to feel very balanced and secure. So we might set things up symmetrically with something right in the middle and identical things on either side. I'm thinking of filmmakers like Wes Anderson and Stanley Kubrick that ground a lot of their efforts in this symmetry, right? That feels sort of balanced. And maybe that's contradictory to what's going on in the film, but it's still, it feels good to the audience. But also, as this example from the stairway scene in the Joker film, we're using the rule of thirds here to sort of draw our eye in a specific direction, and potentially there's like a primary location, and then there's this implied movement, or like our eye begins here and moves there. Using the rule of thirds to your advantage can be an easy way to, again, engage and immerse your audience in whatever it is that you've been filming. Another important thing to think about is weight and magnetism. So headroom, meaning the amount of space between your head and the top of the screen. Lead room, as in, well, I'm potentially moving in this direction, so there's this implied movement. So you need to give space for that. And then look space too, even if the subject isn't moving, maybe it's a seated interview and people are looking at each other from across a table. And one shot of one subject needs to have the amount of space so that we can feel like they're looking at the person that's across from them. Now we can use those things in creative ways and contradictory ways also. The example that I've got here, this image from a television show called Mr. Robot, is all about this dystopian future, and there's a lot of paranoia, and people are always looking over their shoulder, and they feel very isolated and alone. So a lot of the shots in these sequences use this look space and this lead room that is very limited, right? We have all the blank space on the opposite side of the image where we wouldn't necessarily expect it. Typically, we see it the other way around, where there's a lot of empty space in the direction that the subject is looking. But this makes this is sort of like an alternative to go against the grain and what we are used to as an audience. So it's sort of unsettling, and it works very well to reinforce the idea of what's going on in the storyline. So how can we use weight and magnetism and the rule of thirds to really emphasize or reinforce a mood or emotion, what's happening on screen, to immerse our audience? All those types of things are going to come into play when deciding exactly how you're going to shoot, what the shot composition is going to look like. And I would encourage you to try all sorts of different things, right? Experiment with this and just see where it takes you. You're always better off to have lots of different options than not enough. So just a real quick overview of shot composition and how it's going to, really play an important role in creating your own video content.